This is Insight. Phone lines are open. Dial 384-2191.
Yes, they are. You can give us a call here, 2191 or 2192, 384 in Marshfield on the second Friday of the month of May. That means we get the people from the Marshfield Police Department in to talk with us. And is it interim, acting? What is it?
I think both of those could apply.
He's a good actor.
Yeah, I don't think there's any right or wrong there.
Oh, you're being too kind here. Yeah, trying to keep the job, huh?
We're day to day, Jeff.
Pat Zepp's joining me. And also Lieutenant Dennis Keffer. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm looking around at your Facebook page, and a lot of it had to do with gifts you've been given from area people here. It's, was it National Police Week?
Yes. Yeah, the every May 15th is Peace Officer Memorial Day, and the week in which that falls is Police Week every year. So that means donuts and cookies get dropped off, and we get a little bit slower, I think.
Hey, there's a test now, I heard. So don't follow.
Yeah, I know. So
you got to stay on top of that.
Yep.
This week, though, I mean, people, it's been a tough time nationally because of things that have happened in the news, and there are terms like defunding police that came about in the past year or more, and it's been a tough profession. It was before, but now more scrutiny than ever, it seems like. So there are a lot of people, though, who are on your side, as evidenced by the gifts that you've been given here of food by and giving you their support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds cliche, but I always throw a shout out to the amazing support we get from this community, and it is really unbelievable. And I always kind of defer to say, it's completely not necessary to do those things, but in a sense, it really helps us get a finger on where we're at in the community, and there's a lot of support for us out there. So it's been really a wonderful week as far as that goes.
I also think that it's somewhat evident of the interactions that we have, the ones that we have locally, and that our community is focused enough to see all of those positive interactions that we have, and the effective interactions too. Some of them, are by their nature not always positive situations, but trying to get as much positive out of them as we can, and people see that over all of the loud noises that are out there nationally.
There hasn't been a lot of specific incidents with your department, but it's been a tough year. Mm-hmm. Because of the fact that I introduced you as acting or interim police chief here. We are without official at this time because Rick Gramza resigned after court cases and appearances in court, and just kind of a tough time for the department all around, and a lot of angst in the building, that kind of thing. So at this point in time, what do you know about the search or what's going to happen here as far as how they're going to sort this out?
Well, really, the next step would be up to the Police and Fire Commission to make that decision, and they do have 2 new members, so there is nothing out there now, but I would imagine that that's probably going to come up on an agenda fairly quickly here. Their main decision is going to be to decide how they want to proceed with the process. There are some options for that. One might include, hiring an outside company to conduct that search. We could also conduct that search internally through our HR department. Not saying one is better than the other, but those are a couple of options that they'll have to take a look at. So, and promoting from within.
I mean, I guess the way you look at it, in your experience on the department, has it been more of a mixture? I mean, you may get some interest or show interest, and then they'll also bring in and try to get the best person for the job, so to speak.
Yeah, correct. I think they've got to do their due diligence by opening the position up to see what type of interest they get, because absolutely they want the best candidate, and you're looking at a long-term type of plan. That's what you're going to want to see from somebody. So there is great benefit in doing that. It doesn't mean that the best candidate may not present themselves internally, but you've really got to do that due diligence to get the best person for the job in the interest of the department and the city. So completely support that process.
Talking with interim acting police chief Pat Zepps here, Lieutenant Dennis Keffer also in the studio with us this morning. If you'd like to talk to them, 384-2191, 384-2192. We talked about this being Police Memorial Week. It's memorial in the title, so that means you honor people that have passed away in the line of duty, and you had I guess you'd say event, ceremony, whatever would you want to call it.
Yeah, we have an honoring of that day this past Tuesday, and where we take a moment to kind of reflect on some of the hazards of our career and the officers that have died nationally, and then locally, and reflecting on the life of Fred Beal also, the only police officer in the city of Marshfield that has been killed in the line of duty. Last year was a profound year in the sense that COVID-19 increased the line of duty deaths significantly, almost doubled them, or a little bit more than doubled them, to over 300, I believe, for the year, when normally it hovers around 150.
Is that national?
That's national. That's a national number.
Okay.
Yes.
And COVID deaths?
Yeah, it was I want to say 160 of those, somewhere ballparking in there.
I suppose you are kind of on front line for meeting people on their turf.
We got to go where we're called, kind of.
So you walk in. I mean, when this first started here a year ago, EMTs and things, that was one of the questions that dispatchers were supposed to ask. Has anybody been sick in your house? But you generally roll up on a scene oftentimes before the dispatch, or even if you are dispatched, they don't get a chance to get it to you before you get there.
No, we may have some indication, but at the same time, we just got to we had to take precautions ourselves, and just like the fire department. And again, some of those calls we didn't, we weren't able to. We got to take them anyways. We got to take them when they come. So,
how did you get through staffing this year?
That's a great question. Initially, we had gone to a bit of a modified staffing schedule where we moved officers to 6 days on and 12 days off, I believe. And that was probably effective because that was early on in the process where most things were still under a lockdown, things were still closed. As the second wave came, we went back to normal, and that served us well too. So staffing, we've been able to weather the storm. There's been some bumps. There's also some grant money that's come in on the city side to cover overtime, which has been really helpful. So we've stayed on our 12-hour shift through the duration of it, and we've done well. And that's a credit to the people inside and outside the building that have really taken their due diligence to be safe and do the social distancing. So compliments to the officers for taking that seriously. It's really helped us.
I know 12 hours works for the off time, but that's a long day. At the end of the day, you're kind of spent, your fuse can be a little short sometimes. So you got to be careful. I mean, that you're in the mood all the way through the entire 12 hours, as opposed to, running up against some knucklehead at the end of the shift and go, oh, you got to be kidding me.
You do get used to it. So,
And the off time really kind of outweighs that. Back when I was working that schedule, when I came in almost 24 years ago, it was almost unheard of to have a 3-day weekend every other weekend, plus a couple days off during the week. So the off time really balanced that 12-hour shift to me, because when you look at the stress of police work, off time is really valuable. That family time, and when you get into the job, you're talking about nights, weekends, and holidays, loss of family times, games, events, weddings, birthdays. That schedule really helps in that area because you do have so many off days that you can make those family things. So I loved it.
It makes for a long day, but like I said, it's the off time that makes it worth it more so.
Well, I'm on 9s now, and they feel just as long as 12s. So I guess it's all relative.
I guess so. Talking with Pat Zepps and Dennis Keffer here from Marshfield PD. You can too, 384-2191, 384-2192, either one of those numbers here. Did I see on your Facebook you were in the dunk tank?
Yeah, they had, everything's got a day and everything's got a week, and it was also a nursing home facility week, I believe, last week. And so Norwood asked us to come up there and help them with their dunk tank. And so myself and Officer Ament and Deputy Stry from the Wood County Sheriff's Department were up there, and the water was cold, I will tell you.
It was a cool morning. They didn't heat it up or bring it out warm?
No, and I don't know. They left it in overnight, but then it drained, and so they had to refill it with fresh cold water. Yeah.
Usually wears I think times in the past you've worn a Vikings jersey in there too.
Well, that was the one down at the other one.
Yeah, that makes people even more determined to sink them. So.
Yeah.
I guess so. So these kind of things come up on occasion, and goodwill things that you're trying to do here within, as you said, the department, and trying to be amongst people as people. Instead of just always with the uniform on or in an authoritative position.
Yeah, it can be somewhat of a challenge in the sense of there's a lot of opportunities that get presented us, and trying to find the ones that continue to match our mission and our outreach and to humanize the badge, to allow us the opportunities to connect with people outside of enforcement type settings, so that we are building those relationships, so that that people know us and feel comfortable interacting with us in any of the situations that we're kind of forced into.
At this time, there hasn't been a lot of high-profile things going on here, and sometimes you double back to cold case investigations when you have an opportunity, provided there's something to investigate. I mean, when a case goes cold, it's usually because all avenues have been pursued. But sometimes it can be because you just don't have time to pursue what the few leads you have, and now you have to go on to what's the day's opportunities. So do you do that? I mean, do you double back on occasion to do those kind of things?
Yeah, I think really what you're talking about is the caseload of our detective bureau. And on some lower levels, patrol does take follow-up cases, but given that they're the first-line responders, typically the ones that are more in-depth are they're forwarded to the detective bureau. So really they're somewhat of a triage mode themselves, to where as cases come in, they've got to decide a level of importance, a level of what the charge is. But as time presents itself, they'll manage their caseload. They'll go back and probably revisit some of those ones that have kind of gone cold and set to the side. So that's part of the job expectation.
When we've talked about this on previous visits here, cyber, with the pipeline shut down and things like that, hackers, people trying to get money out of people, scamming is a constant in the community, isn't it?
Yeah, I just read a report. I was reading the reports the other day, and seeing the other one. You've won $30,000, but to get this money, you need to send us $300 plus a $500 processing fee, and a lot of times it's we need you to go to Walmart to get a series of gift cards or whatever. So anytime they're asking for personal information that you didn't initiate, anytime that they're asking for money to get money, that's a scam, and people got to avoid those. Just hang up, discontinue the conversations.
I've had things on my cell phone where we've tried to deliver and you weren't home, so click on this and we'll get this straightened out as to when we can deliver the package. Yeah. And I just happened to be going to the post office, and I showed it to the lady behind the counter, and she said, no, don't do that. I said, well, there's no name on here. It doesn't say FedEx, it doesn't say USPS, it doesn't say who it was that was trying to deliver. It just says we tried to deliver. And most often people have something that's going to be coming at some point in time, with as much internet commerce as we do nowadays. But do people come to you, or do you want to know those things?
We get so many of those that's what's hard for us too, and there's all these different variations of essentially the same thing, related to personal information or related to sending money. We don't put every one of them out, so we don't need to hear all of the ones. If there's a local twist, we like hearing about it. Recently someone hijacked a local business's Facebook account and started sending out messages, to try and get people to click on something, and so that's one we're happy to share, any of those, but we get so many of them that we can't share them all, and we can't share like it came from this number or whatever. A lot of times when it comes from a specific number, then they just change that number,
Define what you mean by share.
Share on our Facebook page. I mean, people message us and say, hey, do you want this information about this scam that someone tried to do with me? And we get easily one of those a week, someone messaging us about that. And so we don't post all of that. Otherwise, our Facebook page would be filled with scam alert, scam alert, scam alert,
Yeah.
and none of the cookie stories.
Yeah, which everybody wants to see.
Yeah, everyone wants the cookies.
Police, getting cookies and donuts. Hey, we did have some healthy stuff dropped off earlier this week, so that was awesome. Yeah.
Well, what fun is that? Awards and things within the department. Are you hiring, or have you added new people, or have you got?
We've got a hiring process going on right now. Thanks for asking that one. They can go on the city's webpage. We got to get it on our Facebook page, right?
Yeah, I think you were going to do that.
Yep. But I'll put that on my list. I'll try and get that out today. But we are hiring. We like people with solid character, and we're looking for that.
Do you go to the courses after you've applied, or do you have to go through the courses to apply, like MSTC?
For our department, we would request that you'd have that basic recruit academy under your belt. Just with the way that our department is staffed and the size of us, that's pretty common for an individual to put themselves through the recruit academy, and then at that point, we would take a look at that.
From what I've seen in the past, now, a lot of people have had part-time positions in other departments, whether it be a sheriff's department job or whether it be in other PDs around the state or around the area, smaller communities, and then something will come up with your department and they'll apply for it that way. So they have some experience. And that's a plus?
Yes.
That is a plus.
Yeah, and we love, especially, we've had a few people that have come home, to their to the community that they grew up in, and so that's been nice because we know they know us and we know them, and so it's refreshing when those connections happen. But hey, some of the best officers come from Minnesota, right, Pat?
Some of the best officers come from Minnesota.
Yeah. So.
There's a ping pong ball flying around here called responsibility going back and forth here. I'm watching it as it hits.
Yeah, and you touch on a good point there, because recruitment is low across the country in police work. And, what I always try to do is take this opportunity to just put a plug out there and say, I would argue it's a great time to get into police work, because everybody that comes in has an opportunity to be a catalyst for change, to change the narrative, to take it upon themselves, to improve our image, to really get into it for the right reasons. So I'd just like to throw that out there, that there is a lot of reasons that people are deterred from it, but there are also a lot of really good reasons to get into it right now. So I think we're going to weather the storm. It's up to us. We've got to do better in some areas. We completely acknowledge that. But we can also turn this thing around and get back to where we were, if not better.
I think each of the officers that work at the department could relay dozens of stories of times when they've had positive impacts on people. And that's really what most of us are all about, is helping someone through a concern, through a rough time in their life, and having a positive impact on our community, making that difference, and that still exists even in this environment.
A lot of what I see on the Marshfield Police Department police blotter is domestic. Two people or a third party somehow getting involved in some domestic incident of some sort, whether it be violating a restraining order, or they get into an argument over child custody, or and you wind up coming in and being referee. So your point is well taken, that sometimes and oftentimes at this level, you're kind of a social worker in a certain extent. Too bad you got to come in with a gun, but I mean, it gets to that point, I guess, sometimes.
Yeah, and we're to calm the storm just a little bit and find that temporary solution to let things calm down. Usually, sometimes that's arrest, sometimes that's otherwise. It really depends upon the situation. But
a lot of the reports I see just say warnings were given to stay away. You're on our radar now, so stay away.
Yeah, for some of the lesser ones where it's just they're calling me names or doing this, and the other person's calling them names. Those types of things. Yeah.
Yep.
And there's different types of harassment too, whether it be online or in person. It used to be, but now it's phone calls or online harassment is a big thing now.
Yeah, it really kind of covers the whole spectrum there. People can be harassed in a lot of ways. And again, what I throw out is kind of my routine disclaimer. By all means, if you have a question or you think it's occurring, call us. One of the first things we'll probably ask you is, have you asked the individual to stop whatever they're doing, whether it's online, whether it's in person? And sometimes that's kind of pivotal to at least set that boundary that, I don't like what you're doing, please stop. And then if it continues, then it gets into really an area where we can step in, mediate that, take action if we need to. But yeah, it's really easy to harass people online now. And that's something that we didn't have when we got into the job all those years ago, so it takes a lot of forms.
And you realize too that when you ask them that simple question, did you ask them to stop? Well, I'm afraid it might escalate.
Right. And we can ask people to have it stop. It just may not result in an enforcement action at that point. But I certainly can understand why someone wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. So at that point, we'll step in on a number of cases, contact the individual and say, hey, this other individual really isn't comfortable with what you're doing and wants you to stop the contact. I would say we have many reports like that on probably a weekly basis, monthly basis.
How much of anonymous tipster is really anonymous? I mean, I'm worried about, because you get on to your neighbor. I don't want him to know that it was me that called, about his junk car or whatever the situation might be in his yard or something like that. I don't want to be starting a range war with my neighbor.
So when you call the dispatch center, if you indicate that you want to be anonymous, that's how they put it into the entry. All right. That limits some of the actions that we can take to a certain degree, because some of the things like a noise complaint, we have to validate and substantiate. I mean, you wouldn't want someone...
Isn't that when you show up, though, then you can validate and substantiate that it's happening?
Potentially, but it has to. We have to have someone that's saying that it's bothering them. We have to have that neighbor a lot of times say that it's bothering them, and there are certain things that I'm already awake. It's not like you woke me up at 2 a.m. because I'm already working, So having it be validated by a specific person.
Does that appear on public record?
Then it would, and you would potentially have to testify in court for those things. But that may be necessary for what it takes to make it stop. When I say that, though, know that there are often times where someone says, no, I'd like to remain anonymous. We go there and we tell the person to turn the music down, and they say, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I understand, and they turn the music down. Or they, stop the bonfire that they're having in the backyard or something along those lines, because they recognize their responsibility to their neighbors. And so it's just a reasonable conclusion to a reasonable concern. So a lot of times the calling in and saying that you want to remain anonymous can be effective to dealing with it. If it's an ongoing concern, though, sometimes we need the complainant's name in there.
That's where things get kind of, I don't know if I want to get involved. And a lot of people, I watch crime TV, there'll be a shooting and somebody, they see anything? Nope, nobody saw a thing. They did.
Well, and they still wrap those up within an hour, which is really
Isn't that good?
Yeah,
that's amazing.
You guys got to step it up.
I know, we got to step out of our game. Dennis, see if you can get on that.
Yeah, I'll put that number 2 behind posting the Facebook thing.
Yeah. Well, but you bring up a good point. There's always some apprehension, I think, because look, it's probably human nature that we don't want to be the catalyst for a problem, but at the same time, one of the things I've seen throughout my career is if it's bothering you, it's probably bothering other people too, and at some point somebody's going to have to call. And like Dennis said, we do our best to keep the integrity of being anonymous, but at some point you also have a right to your peace, and should you make that complaint and we take some action and now the harassment starts or whatever it is, well, now we're entering into a different area of a violation that we can also take action on. So if that happens, that's not generally tolerated by us either. So.
But then there's retribution, and can you prove it was them? And then there's all kinds of, that's that range war kind of thing you get with your neighbor that I don't want to get into.
A lot that happens less than I think people think it does, so too.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
Otherwise nothing would get reported, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a different world too, where neighbors don't. I had an interesting conversation this morning in that meeting after you stepped out, but how much do neighbors really communicate now in different areas, and
that's true.
Did we lose some of that, that neighborhood connection with all the technology and stuff? So all good questions. We probably don't have all the answers to that, but some of that probably plays into some of the issues.
Yeah, we don't know each other or are familiar with each other as we used to be. Is the neighborhood watch still a thing?
It's not as active as it could be.
How does that? How does it work?
Well,
how somebody get involved?
The best thing is we don't have an active that I'm aware. I don't think we don't have an active neighborhood watch group now. We have the tools to put one in place. So really, what that would be a group of individuals in a neighborhood approaching us to restart that program. The program has come and gone in my years, and I think as neighborhoods become safer, people just kind of lose interest, and it just kind of gets set by the wayside. Generally those are problem-oriented type of things that neighborhoods decide they don't want to tolerate anymore. It could be entry into vehicles or, loud parties or whatnot, but, there's a value to it, and I would encourage any neighborhood group that wants to do that, we're certainly open to relaunching that on some level.
You said something interesting to me. As neighborhoods get safer or have gotten safer in this day and age, because of the reporting that goes on, it sounds like this is the worst time of our lives. But when you look at statistics, it's really not.
Right, and I'm talking more like on the Marshfield community level. We've got our problems, but I could sit here and tell you that I live in what I believe to be a very safe neighborhood, to where I personally as a citizen wouldn't come forward and say we need a neighborhood watch group. Doesn't negate that that's a good thing, but there might be things as a citizen that might drive me to that. If I'm seeing things, if I'm out walking at night, there's concerns or things are happening in other areas of the city that I don't want to come here. So when I say that, you're right, there are some real contentious crime problems going across the country. We are not without our problems. I generally believe we're a safe community. But at the same time, one of the things to remember about a neighborhood watch group is you can also be a very good deterrent from things becoming problems. So, and that's also a great thing, and it's a big part of our job, is how do we stop problems before they become problems? And so, I'm very supportive of neighborhood watches and, those types of groups forming.
Might be a way to meet your neighbors for a change.
Exactly. Yeah.
Actually get them at a meeting and say, oh, is that where you're over there? And, shake hands and say hello and keep an eye on my place while I'm gone for a weekend vacation or something like that.
That might be fun.
Who knows? We used to have a lot more block parties than we do now, for that matter. So, talking with Marshfield Police Department here on today's Inside program, 384-2191, 384-2192. Pat Seps and Dennis Keffer in here to talk with you if you'd like to join us.
When they see we've got a lot going on, sometimes they'll drop off some food for us, and they've also helped us out with a couple of events like the Shop with a Cop, where we feed the kids. On that night they've helped us out. So they were nominated and received that award. We have an Agency Assist Award for a professional organization that we work with frequently, and this year we presented that to the emergency room staff at Marshfield Medical Center for all that they do we're usually working hand in hand with them in a lot of situations, and there are a lot of challenging situations that we work with them on, and they're always very professional and appropriate and supportive of what our needs are, and so we appreciate working with the ER staff a lot.
That's I see things like posting an officer, or more often in your level, you go up and get a statement, whether it be after an accident or some sort of incident or whatever the case may be. You have to go up there and talk to someone in that hospital setting. Do you, how would I say, just talk to them there? Is there any legal ramifications? Well, usually when you're involved, there is. With testimony to certain things that happen, or do you?
No, I think it's just like any other setting for us. We're respectful of their primary needs to get their physical health and oftentimes their mental health to taken care of prior to getting a statement from someone. But most of the time it's just like any other setting, saying, "Hey, are you willing to talk to us? We've got some questions about what happened."
Drunk driving, blood draw. Mm-hmm. Is that something that, as I am pulled over, I don't have to take a breathalyzer test, but that puts me into a category of, how would I say, implicit consent of guilt, or what's the term you use?
What you're talking about, I think, is implied consent, where it's where by getting a driver's license, you're indicating that you consent to your blood being drawn if there's suspicion of OWI.
But what level goes to that? I mean, if I don't take a breathalyzer at the scene, I can opt to take a draw, or if I don't do it, then you determine that you have to take me for a draw.
Yes and yes. So when if you were stopped under suspicion of OWI, the officer would be looking at a whole calls exists outside of that.
Yeah, it's a totality of all of those tests that Dennis described. And when you're talking specifically about a PBT or a preliminary breath test, that's one part of that probable cause formula that an officer uses to determine if they're going to arrest somebody for OWI. So, like Dennis said, people could be staggering, they could have slurred speech, they could have bloodshot eyes. There's a lot of indicators when someone's over the limit. So if they refuse those two things, then it really puts the officer in a decision to say, okay, what do I have to work with now? And is the fact of those refusals, does that become part of their probable cause? So it really is situational, but you are not required to take that preliminary breath test if that's what you're asking.
But then I have to take a blood test.
Potentially.
You get read a form after that says that that we're asking you to take a blood test. Will you consent to that? And then there are certain rights and responsibilities that kind of go along with your yes or no answer there too.
So then I take a ride with you in the cruiser up to the hospital,
Yep.
and we leave the vehicle there.
Yes.
And
we do the blood draw at the hospital then.
And that goes into that implied consent, because by refusing the blood test, you're actually violating your implied consent to take that test when you get your driver's license. So there's different gamuts of things that kick in. But
You get your driver's license gets revoked at that point.
if you don't.
Correct.
I see. And I knew there was something that had to be happening there, because I knew there was a penalty if you didn't consent, because there's an implied consent when you take the license.
right.
I didn't. Okay, that's how that works. So, which in the court cases that you've been involved in, PBT or breathalyzer or blood test is more accepted?
Well, they're all accepted in their various levels. The preliminary breath test, the PBT, the results of that aren't admissible in court unless someone's questioning whether or not we had probable cause to take them into custody. The blood test result is admissible in court. The breathalyzer or intoximeter, which is a different breath test, which has more kind of fail-safes or protections kind of built into it, that result is also admissible in court.
Oh, now you got three options here. Or
Yes and no.
Our primary test would be the blood test. That's what we
Yes.
would ask you to do. So the fact that you say you'll take a breathalyzer, which is an intoxilyzer, doesn't necessarily negate the fact that you are required to take the test that we're asking you to do, but you could also ask to take that intoxilyzer test, and we would provide that if we were able to.
how long does it take at the hospital to turn it around? I mean, that you stop someone, take them up there, they get the draw, and then take them back right away, or is it results?
No, it depends. It depends on how busy they are, and we don't get the results right away. We take the blood sample with us. First of all, the officers aren't drawing the blood from the person, just to clarify that.
To make people feel a little more comfortable,
Yeah.
even though you've been...
It's a phlebotomist, someone who's trained to do that, and they're actually trained to take the specific samples for the State Lab of Hygiene. So
There are no plans to move that to the officers
Yeah.
drawing blood.
Well, some of these people I see giving vaccines, I wonder if they were doing that yesterday or have before.
we don't get the blood result at that point. It usually comes back about 3 weeks later. The amount of time that we spend at the hospital for something like that can be between 20 minutes and 2 hours, depending upon how busy the ER staff is and the other priorities that they have there.
Talking with the Marshfield Police Department, you can too, 384-2191, 384-2192. Sometimes we get into these discussions of just your daily demystifying your job, so to speak. I mean, I've seen these things happen, but I've heard other people say, and there you go, it's the telephone game, you know. I've heard other people say, and then the story gets all turned around by the time it gets to the third person. So I thought I would ask you about how some of these things are handled on a daily basis. So at this point in time here, anything in your radar that you're working on? Obviously, besides from the public's point of view, the chief is probably the most obvious thing, but that's not in your hands. That's
Correct.
something that's going to be by the Police and Fire Commission, and time will tell how that works out.
Correct. That's really nothing that we focus on right now, at least me personally. Again, for the last 9 months, I remain focused to doing what I can to keep the department moving forward, giving the officers what they need, and just working with them to keep us moving forward. And really, my message has been, let's remain focused on why we're here. It's a great time to remember why we got into the job. It's really easy to get sucked into some things that are out of our control, but at the end of the day, I truly believe, and I know, all administrators believe in our department, that we got a community that needs us just as much as we need their support, and that's what we remain focused on, that when you call, you're going to get the same level of service that you had prior to any of this stuff happening, because the chief in an organization sets a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's up to each and every one of us to go out and do our jobs correctly. And that's why I really believe in keeping us focused on why we're here, and that is to serve and protect the community and provide the best service that we can. So that's been my stance on that throughout the last 9 months.
Talking with Pat Zeps and Dennis Keffer here today on the Insight program with AM 1450 WDLB and the Marshfield PD. Join us, 384-2191 or 92. You might be having your coffee with us this morning here in the 10 o'clock hour. It's 10:44 on WDLB in our live time. You can listen to this program. It is recorded on a daily basis. When you go to WDLBAM.com, you go to Community and you look for Audio Archives. Under Audio Archives, look for the Insight folder. When you open that, you will get a list of dates. And this one would be 051421 for the 14th of May. And you can click on that, and it should begin to play automatically in your default player on your device, or you can download it that way as well, and then play it on whatever software you have on your device to make audio play. But you can re-listen to these programs. Oftentimes guests will come on and say, can I get a recording of that, or did you record that? And I said, yes, we did, out of my control. I wouldn't remember to turn the button on every day, but they do. So the computer turns it on and off every day here, Monday through Friday in the 10 o'clock hour here on WDLB. So it's kind of evidence, too, actually. That's one thing about radio. Once you say it, it's usually gone until it's recorded.
Yeah.
And then it's not gone. And so, but you know all about that, right?
That's your own personal version of a body camera.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we used to say, when you had print, like the paper, you could put it in front of somebody and say, here, see, this is your quote. This is what you said. On radio, you didn't have to worry about that. Well, it's not that simple anymore. Devices are easily recorded now, or more so than years ago with a cassette recorder holding it up to the speaker.
Sure.
So with computerization, we're able to get digital files of this now. With your, we talked about this many times. I don't know if there's anything more to say about it. Body cam archives, being able to archive all of that, how long you hang on to it, and what's necessary to hang on to and what's not.
Well, I mean, it's a great question. We have different tiers and lengths of time that we hang on to different videos depending on what the call, the offense, the whatever event that has. So we have that spelled out. It's a great system right now because it's all saved in the cloud. So one of the things we learned early on with body cameras is that we had a server that filled up relatively quickly with our prior brand of body camera. And when we transitioned away from that, we were really able to, the cloud is huge for us because there is an unbelievable amount of video that is stored and uploaded. So, again, the times that it's kept, it just varies. Some of the more serious offenses, once the case is disposed of, we may eliminate that. There are some we may keep forever, even if a case is disposed of. So it really is situational depending on what the video is.
And the generic contacts, those are, 90 days or 60 days? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think they're right around 90 days. And some of them we've bumped up to 6 months just because we can, and we don't see a problem. There's two schools of thought. Statutorily, we're required to keep differing pieces of media, print or whatever, for a certain amount of time, but we do have some freedom to keep it longer if we choose.
Now, I understand a body cam where it's on you. You can take it off of your uniform and put it into a docking station and download what's on there. But do you do that with a dash cam too?
No, that one just uploads automatically. It's set to upload automatically.
So the car, does everybody have their own in this department, or do you have one gets in, another gets out?
One gets in, another one gets out. So we've got, for the patrol vehicles, we've got 6 or 7 vehicles that...
we got nine total, that including the 2 K9 cars.
Okay.
And so that has to be loaded then. I mean, it's not up to them to take it out at the end of their shift. And,
correct.
And
correct. When they pull in, the server recognizes it and starts uploading the videos when it's parked outside the station. Then.
Oh, yours is kind of sneaky too, just like mine.
Yeah, there we go.
It's in the background. I forgot. Oops, that's on tape.
Yeah.
Giving out our big secrets here now.
Yeah.
See all the donut stops in the evening.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to go to those because they're all dropped off at the PD.
Yeah. We covered that in minute 1. Yeah.
Yeah, we can hide in the department. All the donuts we want. Maybe, so
Nice. PD Donut Shop. We got their own here. But you have had, I noticed too, bicycles turned in. And this was something that I was, years ago, there used to be bike graveyard or whatever you call it there. You had an impound.
Yeah.
Does that still exist?
Yes. Yeah, we got a lot of bikes that get turned in every year. Just found on someone else's property or something like that, and they don't coincide with something that's been stolen. So we hang on to that for a year and then send it off to auction if no one picks it up.
Do you do that in the city auction?
Yes.
When does that take place?
Iggy's auction house. Is that one
Yes.
right around now? Is it the summertime?
Yeah, we usually do that in the spring because it's unbelievable how many bikes we have, and it's hard to fathom that people don't claim them.
Are they all licensed?
No. If there's a license, so we can find out. Yeah.
We can find out whose it is then. But one of the things we did do historically years ago is we'd hold a big police auction where we would
Right,
go
that's
through.
what I was thinking.
Well, that became kind of financially burdensome from what you were paying people to run it, get it ready, and do this. So using an outside auction company has been really good as far as saving money on our end. So
So do they trickle out, or is it one big time of the year?
No, it's one big time of the year, I think.
some of the little things will trickle out. Like
Okay.
we've sold.
Oh, the lights, yeah.
Yeah, we've sold some things over time, but the bikes will come out at once, and you find a lot of people, I think, buy lots of them. They'll buy 10 here or whatever. Some people fix them up, and some are not in great shape, but anybody who's looking for something to do.
You bring up a good point, though, with the licensing. We used to have, I don't know if it was $5 or $10 to license your bike for 5 years or whatever. Now we give those licenses away for free. So people just come down, they register their bike. They're required to. If you're going to ride it in the city, you're required to have your bike licensed. And then you get a little sticker on there. And it helps for situations like this, where when we find a bike, we can check the bike license number and get it right back to the owner under those circumstances. But the ones that we have in our impound are ones that aren't licensed.
Is that an annual update?
No, that's for the life of the bike. I think it stays on there as long as it's because we relate it back to the year that the license was given.
Well, that gets back to like chipping your pet. When your pet gets rehomed, you have to change the information on the chip, or in this case, with a sticker that coordinates.
Yes, potentially. But also, I've also had where I've called the previous owner of a dog, and they said, no, I sold it to this person, and we're still able to make that connection, even though it's the indirect one. So that
Okay.
can happen with a bike, too. But
Yeah, you have to go through the former to get to the present, huh?
yeah.
A couple of times. So that's free now. And does that come through your department or the
Yep.
city?
Yep, no, stopping at the lobby Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30.
Just fill out the paperwork,
Yep.
and then they give you the sticker.
Yep.
Okay. So it's registered in order, and mostly for stolen. I mean,
Correct. To be able to identify that. That's the biggest.
Is there a OWI on a bicycle?
No.
Well, that's good to know.
It's just not safe.
Yeah.
That's true. How did that joke go about the guy came out with a bottle of whiskey, going to get on his bike? He says, you're going to fall down. So he says, so, you can't hold that, while you're driving. You're going to crash. So he drank it, and sure enough, he crashed.
Yeah, goes back to you can't have an open container, so you got two choices: you drink it or you dump it.
Yeah.
And this time of the year now, backyard parties and things, open containers. What's legal on city streets? I mean, we've had council ordinances and discussion about patios and on what's available now outside at local establishments. There have been some exceptions with wine walk and things like that. Even the police department was supportive of those. So what is an open container law at my house on any street?
No, on your own private property, you're fine. And in most public parks, you're fine if you're in the picnic areas and things like that. The concern is when you're walking the streets and sidewalks. That's when that becomes a violation, unless there's a specific exception that gets approved by the Common Council, like you just talked about for like the wine walks or whatever. Sometimes they'll have those.
So I can't just walk down the street with a
Correct.
can of beer
Correct.
Or a coffee mug conspicuously holding a can of beer. So
Yeah.
Oh, you know about
it
it.
doesn't make it any more legal. But those resolutions I personally feel have been good, and they've kind of added to those events, those wine walks and pub crawls.
Hub City Days, I
The
think.
Hub City Days, yeah, so that one's coming up. But we may look at, changing that so each one of those doesn't necessarily have to go before the council. So that's kind of on one of my to-do lists, was to maybe look if we can maybe update that ordinance a little bit. But there's been no problems with those, and I think they add to the events, and it's gone over well.
Now, you talk about Hub City Days and beer garden, you still have to be within the fenced in. area.
Yeah, there's always restrictions on some of these things, but yeah, locations or fencing and being able to control some of those things.
Talking with Dennis Keffer and Pat Zepps here, Marshfield PD, 384-2191 or 92 here on the Insight program for today. Backyard parties, you talked about bonfires and things and people sitting around. Other than what, noise ordinances? Is there a curfew shutdown time when you probably shouldn't be doing that anymore? Or
No, nothing specific. So if you're talking quietly back there by your fire and the neighbors aren't concerned, you should be fine. There's a whole other series of ordinances related to that. It needs to be 30 feet away from the any building. I think 36 inches is the max width of a fire pit.
And a pit might be different than a self-contained.
No, even the self-contained ones or whatever. I don't know. What do you call a pit?
You got to call the fire department on this one.
Yeah, it's in there. But and then as to what you're burning, you're just burning wood. You can't burn your junk back there.
Yeah, tires and things like that are going to get us called real quickly.
Ain't going to get you a ticket. Yeah,
and the DNR is not going to like that either.
No, not today, especially. There's high fire danger index around the area. But I just want to keep people, this time of the year, people are going to be getting out and doing things outdoors, and there are parties that will happen in the backyard, and what's legal, what's not, so to speak. Mostly it's just, I'm not going to bellyache at anybody for having a party. I mean, even if it is kind of loud, I mean, it's go over there with them if you want,
As long as it's not every weekend. A lot of people, I think, have that sentiment also, or they're not have to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning the next morning.
Usually when we get called to those things, there is the one that's loud and they're normally respectful and they'll turn it down a little bit given the time of night. But it's those, like we had talked about earlier, those kind of problem ones. If you're doing this every weekend and people are getting tired of it, then that's a little different, and we may have to just say, hey, you're starting to cause a problem with your neighbors.
Yeah, I'm an entertainer suddenly, huh?
Right.
Instead of just having the
if you're out there playing your electric guitar, at 1 in the morning,
my accordion.
That's actually a great way to end a party for me, is just kind of get my electric guitar out, and people tend to filter out at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Even in the daylight.
Yeah. Well, it's about that time.
Yeah, the neighbor's dog starts howling then, Pat. Isn't that what happens?
Yeah.
Now we got a noise complaint. Yeah.
I am no Eddie Van Halen, so.
Nice try, though. 384-2191 or 92 here. We're running out of time for our program for today. We've talked about the opening here at the top of a police chief. That'll be handled in the days to come. Keep listening for that. They do have openings on the department if you know of someone who might be qualified. They are taking applications or are hiring at the process right now. There have been some opportunities for this and moving up within the department as well. So we talked about National Police Memorial Week had their service or event, I guess you might say. Was it at Wildwood?
Yep. We just had it at Wildwood on Tuesday night.
And had an opportunity to memorialize the people who lost their life in the line of duty. Specifically here, I think you said Fred Beal was the only one so far.
Back in 1933, yep.
That's a good thing. And, people think now with guns and the media, you hear so much about things that happen instantaneously around the state and around the country that we're in a more dangerous time. But the statistics don't necessarily bear that out. I mean, people are fearful, but not... They're vigilant, maybe would be a better word. We talk about curfews, and you don't see kids walking the streets much anymore, or you don't have those, cruising like we did back in the day with loud mufflers and stuff like that. Kids just don't do that anymore. At $3 a gallon, I think I understand why, even though they are more efficient, so to speak, than the cars we had back then. But it's just a different world now. A lot of what you do is incidents by vehicles, fender benders, parking lots, people smacking into one another, not paying attention, or a lot of that kind of stuff, or domestic incidents, people on people.
There's a lot of things out there too that we deal with, but I think the biggest challenge for us is to remain vigilant and understand that those things can happen here, and not be oblivious to it, and keep our training and our heads in the game, because they do happen, and again, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate here.
Yeah, ask all the people it happened to, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That never happened here before.
Yep.
Well, it did now. So, all right. Well, I always enjoy you making yourself available to us here and talking about the operations of the department as it is. So stay safe.
All right, thank you.
Pat Zepps and Dennis Keffer, my guest here from Marshfield PD on today's program on AM 1450 WDLB.